many people resent Windows 10 and 11 and dream of the days of Windows 7. So they try to put in their brand new system only to be hit by problem after problem. And it doesn't help that Microsoft's greed has extended to the OEMs as well. Today's test subject is a Dell G5 5000, rocking an Intel Core i5-10400F, a GTX 1650 Super, 64 gigs of DDR4, and a 512 gig OEM SK Hynix SSD. Before we proceed, however, there are a few things that are going to be iffy. Sleep in hibernation likely won't work. Newer CPU features don't exist. Modern GPUs won't have drivers, and really a lot of things will have drivers actually. And please, make sure you're competent in a terminal interface. And it goes without saying, but please download relevant drivers beforehand, especially your network drivers, because chances are they won't install on their own, just like all the other drivers. Also, the RAM caps on the 6 editions of Windows 7 are different than those that we see on Windows 10 today. For example, if you have more than 16 gigs of RAM, you should not get the Home Premium Edition as it's capped at 16 gigs. Get the Professional Edition, which is capped at much more generous 192 gigabytes. And also this goes without saying, but please don't get a 32-bit image. Don't. Also, if you're rocking an Alder Lake chip, you might see some issues with it not being able to recognize the difference between P cores and E cores. But if you're confident that your machine isn't too new, make sure to watch the whole video through so you don't waste time realizing that you screwed up. So the main roadblocks you'll face are getting the graphics to initialize, patching the acpi.sys file to bypass the A5 blue screen, and getting USB drivers. The first issue you'll realize when you boot up Windows 7 is the flower completes halfway before you reboot. And that is because Windows 7 does not support UEFI's implementation of graphics initialization without drivers. Back in the days of Windows 7, it was standard to use a conventional BIOS, which used an interrupt called INT10H. Windows exploited this interrupt to initialize graphics. However, this interrupt no longer exists on UEFI systems, having been replaced by UEFI GOP, Graphics Output Protocol, which Windows 7 will not output a display on. And if you're lucky, your motherboard will have CSM just right out of the box, but if you're on a system like this Dell, where it's an OEM, we're going to need some firmware trickery. In your BIOS, you can also enable Legacy Boot if you want, but this is only necessary if you want to install to an MBR disk, which I personally wouldn't recommend because they don't support anything above 2 terabytes, although it's up to you. And while you could skip the firmware trickery and use something like UEFI 7, I personally had a lot of issues with the UEFI 7, so I don't recommend it. The issue I had with UEFI 7 was that when I installed the GPU drivers, it outright refused, claiming a resource error, and after some further research, it was because of the way UEFI handled resources, so I went straight to firmware modding. So you're going to want to run the Universal BIOS Backup tool as an administrator. Select your max memory size, and hit read. Once the read is done, back up the ROM file to somewhere. So we're now going to launch UEFI tool. And we're going to load in that BIOS image we just created. And we're going to search up for whatever the OEM calls CSM. In the case of Dell, it's called Legacy Option ROMs. As you can see, at the bottom, there's a few entries of Legacy Option ROMs. Just find, whatever says setup, and then extract the whole thing as is. And now open IFR extractor and convert to a text file so we can actually read it. Now we're going to go read the file. And search up for that thing you search. So in this case, Legacy Option ROMs. And we're going to look for the variable that it's stored under. So in this case, it's 0xA7D. So you're now going to boot into your grub USB and type the following in. setup_var, setup, whatever the offset is, and verify that it's a legitimate offset. And finally, if it's a legitimate one, write the offset to turn it on. And now reboot. And as you see, we now have CSM. So at this point, you can boot Windows 7. However, you won't make it very far because of an issue that plagues basically every modern computer that's trying to run Windows 7. And that is the dreaded incompliant ACPI. Back in the days of Windows XP, you could bypass ACPI, but ever since Vista, tough luck. To resolve this, we're going to download an updated acpi.sys file from the internet, extract it with 7-zip or something like that. We're going to mount the boot.wim of the Windows 7 installation. We're going to copy over the updated acpi.sys. And it's very important that you update the checksum. I'll use CFF Explorer to make sure that you won't get other errors with Windows. If it tells you that you can't copy to the current location, save the file to your desktop and copy it over to the driver's folder manually. Now we're going to unmount the image. I had the old folder open while it was unmounting, so I had to delete it to use the same directory to mount the next index of the image. And repeat the process. Now, if we go back to the USB, it should go a lot smoother now. No more blue screens. However, we encounter our third roadblock here, and that is Windows 7 does not have native USB 3.0 drivers in the installation media. And as such, on any modern computer with only XHCI controllers, your mouse and keyboard will not work. Unless for whatever reason you're using a USB 2.0 expansion card, or you have an OEM PC with PS2 ports. I mean, in that case, I doubt you have issues booting Windows 7, but we're going to patch some USB drivers into this installation media. So you're going to NT Lite and add in a driver. We're going to get this driver from the Windows 7 image updater found on the video help forum. Go down that. So go over to MSFN to this page in which someone ported the Windows 8 USB 3 native driver over to Windows 7. Go and download the hotfix that's mentioned. Integrate that into NT Lite along with the USB driver from the Windows 7 image updater. And now save the image. Let's try booting again. As you can see, now we have USB support, so your mouse and keyboard now work. So we're now just going to go through the install process. And now, if you have an NVMe drive, you will need to grab the NVMe hotfix from Microsoft. Now, I couldn't find the official download link, so I just found one off Lenovo's support website. In the same process as the Windows 7 USB drivers, just add it through NT Lite into the image and save it. Now that that's been taken care of, we can go boot back into the Windows 7 USB. Now, for some reason, there's this weird PCI driver error that I couldn't exactly figure out. So we're just going to go over to a Windows 10 installation and just apply the image via DISM. And now we're going to have to redo the ACPI fix, otherwise we're going to get another A5 BSOD. And now if we boot back, the setup should go fairly smoothly. If that happens to you, just go and redo the ACPI fix. Now if we go back to Windows 7, theoretically at this point we should have no issues. So just go through the out-of-box experience. Here we go. Your Windows 7 experience is here. By this point, it's time to install drivers, get Windows up to date, get a browser like Supermium so you aren't left behind 2023. And really, at that point, there's Windows 7, perfectly usable in 2024. While yes, there are some caveats I mentioned earlier, but at this point, you have finished your mission of telling Microsoft and its partners to leave you alone. Congratulations. Now go enjoy that beautiful Aero glass transparency and actual functional computing without the annoyances that is Cortana, Copilot. Anyways, I hope you found this video helpful. Leave a thumbs up, subscribe, and see you next time.